Imagine this. A bank that's been around for 100 years, a real cornerstone of its community, seems totally rock solid, a place where generations trusted their money. Now picture that same place just crumbling in days, brought down by this really complex web of lies. And right at the center of this financial disaster, there's a shocking death, a mysterious one. Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're heading to Bridgeport, Chicago. It's a neighborhood that was just, completely devastated by everything that happened, left a scar that you can still feel today. Okay, so at the heart of this story, this really baffling story, are two main figures. First, you've got John F. Jumbura. He's the third-generation CEO of Washington Federal Bank for Savings. His family name was basically gold in Bridgeport, trust, stability, all that. And then there's Marek Matczuk. He's described as Jumbura's right-hand man. Really interesting character driver, handyman, even bodyguard, apparently. And it was inside Matczuk's own home, a quiet place in Park Ridge, that Jumbura was found. He had passed away. It's a situation that immediately makes you ask what really went on behind closed doors.
And that's exactly what we're trying to do in this deep dive. We're going to unpack it all layer by layer. How could a respected bank, so deeply rooted in the community's history, just completely unravels? And it unraveled because of this insidious, long-running embezzlement scheme. But it goes beyond just the massive financial fraud. We have to confront the really unsettling questions around Jumbura's passing. It was officially ruled a suicide, right? But many people really close to the situation, they still have profound doubts. This story, it isn't just about the money, even though we're talking like billions lost in the fallout. It's about trust being shattered, hidden motives, these unbelievable blind spots and oversight, and a community just left completely reeling.
It really is a journey that it'll make you feel like you're the detective piecing it all together. There are just so many layers here. Deception, hidden money, these really unexpected connections that somehow weave together. It's wild. From the very top leadership at the bank, right down to local political figures. It seems like almost everyone was touched by this scheme, or at least by the aftermath. So, yeah, get ready. Okay, let's unpack this. For generations, Washington Federal Bank for Savings wasn't, just a bank. It was more like an anchor, a vital part of Chicago's Bridgeport neighborhood. It was one of those places where everybody knew your name, where your parents banked, probably your grandparents too. The Jumbura family had run it for 3 generations. Since 1913, I think.
That's right. That kind of history, that family presence, it builds this incredible sense of security, stability. People felt it was a real community institution, part of their daily lives. For the folks in Bridgeport, this wasn't just where they put their savings. It was a symbol. Reliability, local pride, a partner for their future plans.
So the idea that something could be deeply wrong, like fundamentally rotten underneath that perfect facade, it was just unthinkable for most people there.
Exactly, which makes it all the more incredible, really, because beneath that surface of stability and community focus, this really insidious scheme was operating quietly, unchecked, for over a decade. It got known as the Friends of John scheme. Basically, John Jumbura, the CEO, was systematically handing out what looked like loans to all sorts of people.
Look like loans.
Right, but here's the shocking part, the core of the fraud. These so-called loans, they were routinely given out with zero collateral, none. And, crucially, there was absolutely no expectation, no requirement that they'd ever be paid back.
Wow.
Yeah. And these funds, which eventually added up to at least $31 million, were then just falsely recorded in the bank's official books, made to look like legitimate payments. This wasn't just, a few bad decisions or risky loans. This was systemic, intentional, funneling money right out of the bank, all while pretending it's normal banking stuff. It completely undermined everything a bank is supposed to stand for.
So how did that even work, like day to day? Were people literally just walking in and asking for huge sums of money with no questions asked?
Pretty much, yeah. In many cases, the investigation found these loans were given out to people, often outside the bank, without any formal applications, no credit checks, sometimes no documentation at all.
No paperwork. For millions.
Sometimes, yes. Imagine walking into your local bank branch, asking for, say, $500,000, and just walking out with it. No papers, no collateral pledged, and knowing you never have to pay it back. That's the level of audacity we're talking about.
That's unbelievable.
It really is. And the betrayal of trust here, especially in that community bank setting, it's just profound. You see, in places like Washington Federal, these personal relationships, they often take the place of really strict oversight, right? Formal procedures. People trusted the Jumbura name. They trusted their neighbors. And that very trust, which should have been the bank's biggest asset, it became the tool used to pull off this massive embezzlement.
So the friends and family approach, the thing that makes community banks feel special.
Yeah, it became this huge vulnerability, exploited systematically by the guy right at the top.
Yeah.
It really shows how easily an institution built on personal connections can be corrupted from the inside.
It's just staggering to think about how many people were involved or at least, benefited from it all, especially early on.
Mm.
Two names really jump out, don't they? Their involvement became pretty notorious. First, Marek Matczuk, Djambara's super close associate, driver, handyman, bodyguard. That suggests more than just work, right? Like deep personal trust, access.
Absolutely, a very close relationship. And the investigation showed Matczuk got millions of dollars from Djambara through this fraud.
Millions. For what?
Well, the story was it was to build $2 million homes in Wicker Park, an upscale area.
Okay.
But here's where it gets even wilder, just unbelievably bold, those homes. They never actually got finished. And after the bank went under, they were basically just given away for no money, like forfeited assets of the failed bank.
Given away. $1 million shells.
Yep.
And wait, there's another layer here that's just, well, it's almost comical if it weren't so serious. Marek Matczuk, while receiving these millions in fake loans, he was also a delinquent mortgage customer at Washington Federal.
Hold on. He owed the bank real money on a mortgage he wasn't paying,
Correct.
while simultaneously getting millions in fraudulent loans he didn't have to pay back.
Exactly. The sheer audacity of it. It's mind-boggling.
Wow. That speaks volumes about the lack of, well, any kind of checks and balances.
It really does. It points to this systemic disregard for basic financial sense that's hard to even grasp. And then there's the other key figure, Robert M. Kowalski.
The lawyer and contractor.
That's him. Also a longtime personal friend of Djambara's, Kowalski. He rerouted over $8 million from the bank through these fake loan schemes. He wasn't just getting money. He was a central player, deeply involved in how the scheme actually worked.
And what's really compelling about him is the defiance, right? Later on. Oh, completely. Even facing overwhelming evidence, he just consistently insisted he was the victim. We'll definitely get into the specifics of that incredible denial later. It's quite something. But for now, just understand, he was one of the biggest beneficiaries of these fake loans, and he was actively involved in hiding it, like falsely recording funds as proper loan payments, even though he knew he never had to pay them back.
So it wasn't just Djambara acting alone. These guys were in deep.
Very deep.
And it wasn't just contained within the bank's walls either, was it? What's fascinating is how this stretched into, well, pretty influential political circles. We're talking about the bank's ties to the Daley family, the political machine that basically ran Chicago for decades.
Deep ties. The bank had issued loans to several known Daley loyalists over the years.
And what's really eyebrow-raising is that just weeks, literally weeks, before the bank finally closed its doors, a big loan went directly to the 11th Ward regular Democratic organization itself, supposedly for repairs on their headquarters.
Right. And for anyone listening who doesn't know Chicago politics, the 11th Ward, that's Daley Central. It's been their political stronghold forever.
Yeah.
2 mayors came from there. So any financial dealings, especially questionable ones, get a lot of attention.
Exactly. Which raises a big question, doesn't it? Did these deep political connections maybe help the scheme last so long? Maybe made people look the other way? Or maybe they actively helped hide what was going on?
It's a really important question. When a bank is seen as being tight with powerful figures like that, maybe scrutiny gets a bit lax. Perhaps there's an assumption of legitimacy, or maybe other agencies are just reluctant to dig too deep. Those connections were definitely there, and they certainly didn't seem to set off any alarms until it was way too late. It suggests there might have been some kind of, shield that allowed the fraud to just keep going for years.
And speaking of alarms not going off, what's truly chilling, I think, is that there were alarms, major ones, crucial warnings about this exact scheme, and they were dismissed. For years, this wasn't some sudden implosion nobody saw coming. There were bright red flags waving for almost a decade. And from really credible people. Get this. Back in 2011, the bank's own chief financial officer, Barbara Glusak, the person whose job it is to spot this stuff, she found falsified records, specifically linked to Robert Kowalski.
Right there at the source. A clear sign of wrongdoing, hitting right at the Friends of John scheme.
And she didn't just notice it and keep quiet. She did her job. She reported it straight to the bank's board of directors. But when nothing really happened, when it seems like her concerns were just brushed off internally, she escalated it. She took it to the FBI and the U.S. Attorney's Office.
She blew the whistle, loud and clear. To the highest authorities she could reach, that takes guts.
Absolutely. And the warnings didn't even stop there.
Right.
In 2012, incredibly, John Gambara's own wife, someone who you'd think has pretty intimate knowledge of his business, maybe the bank's inner workings, she also went to the authorities independently, told them about illegal activity at the bank.
Wow. So you have the CFO
Right.
and the CEO's wife, both within about a year raising serious red flags to federal law enforcement about the same bank.
It's an incredible convergence of warnings.
Yeah.
The siren should have been deafening.
And yet, this is the truly shocking part. Despite these incredibly clear, explicit warnings coming from a top internal officer and a close family member, absolutely nothing substantial happened. For years, no immediate aggressive investigation shut the scheme down, no quick intervention to stop the flow of money.
Just kept going.
It just kept going. And if you connect this to the bigger picture, it points to these critical, really alarming failures in oversight, in response mechanisms at multiple levels. You know, regulators like the FDIC, the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency, they're supposed to do regular audits, make sure banks are following the rules. And when warnings like this, targeting specific people and activities, are brought right to federal law enforcement, you expect action. Fast. Decisive.
But it didn't happen.
It seems not. The fact that these warnings apparently went unheeded for another 5 years, allowing millions more to be siphoned off, it suggests either, profound negligence or maybe something more deliberate was stopping the full exposure of the scheme.
That's a chilling thought.
It's a deeply unsettling question. How could such clear warnings from credible sources just be ignored for so long?
So despite the sirens blaring, the fraud just rolled on. Fast forward 5 more years. November 29, 2017. This is where things finally dramatically come to a head. Federal regulators doing what was supposed to be just a routine audit, they finally stumble onto it. The massive embezzlement scheme that had been running kind of in plain sight for over a decade.
The party was over. The jig was up. Irrevocably.
They immediately pushed the bank's board. Suspend Gambara. Now, remove him as CEO. This wasn't just finding a problem. It was like dropping a bomb. It created this immense immediate pressure. Urgency. Inside the bank, and obviously for Gambara himself, he suspended, the frauds exposed, the future of the bank, his whole life, just hanging by a thread. Wait until you hear this next part, because what happens next is just central to the whole mystery of this thing. So the discovery of the fraud, his immediate suspension, it sent Gambara's life into this sudden, dramatic tailspin. He needed somewhere to go, right? A refuge from this storm that just blew up around him. And where does he go?
To Marek Matczuk's house. His incredibly loyal right-hand man, the same Matczuk who'd received millions in those fraudulent loans.
And he didn't just crash on the sofa. Matczuk gave him his main bedroom for the weekend. That detail for me, it really highlights how incredibly close they were, almost like family.
It speaks to this deep level of trust, or maybe it was dependence, that was really at the core of their relationship and this whole story. It was clearly a place Gambara felt safe, even as his world was collapsing.
And it's right here, in these days leading up to the terrible discovery, that this seemingly innocent detail pops up. And later, it takes on this really profound, deeply unsettling meaning.
Yeah. On December 2nd, 2017, just the day before Gambara was found, Matczuk's son and Gambara, they went out together. And they bought a green rope.
Green rope.
A green rope. The story that came out later was it was supposedly for Christmas decorations, for Gambara's own house back in Palace Hills.
Okay. Just seems like a normal holiday errand.
Right. Think about that. Just this common household item bought for a happy, festive reason. And it would soon become tied to the most tragic, most mysterious part of this whole saga. It's such a small detail, seemed totally harmless at the time, but it just continues to haunt all the questions around how Gambara passed away. Cast this long, dark shadow over the official story.
And then, the next morning, December 3rd, 2017. That's when Matczuk and his wife made the discovery. The shocking discovery. John F. Gambara had passed away. He was found seated in a chair with that exact same green rope around his neck near a spiral staircase inside Matczuk's house.
The scene must have been horrific. The implications immediate, devastating for everyone there and obviously for the future of the bank.
In the immediate aftermath, the local police, the Cook County Medical Examiner, they arrived, they assessed the scene, and they quickly concluded it was a suicide.
The presence of the rope, the circumstances, it led them to that official ruling. But, and this is a big but, what's truly fascinating and deeply unsettling is Gambara's family and many others involved in the case. They have never accepted that conclusion.
They don't believe he took his own life.
No. They've consistently, very vocally, expressed profound doubts. They suggest there's a much deeper, maybe darker mystery here. They pointed to things like his strong Catholic faith, which forbids suicide. They said he seemed upbeat, even with the bank troubles. And they found the circumstances of the scene itself unusual.
And Matczuk, what did he say? I mean, it happened in his house.
Well, Matczuk himself, speaking later in court through a Polish translator, actually, he adamantly denied any involvement, any malicious intent. He said something like, "When that man took his own life, he raised his hand against himself at my house." He mentioned a party for his kids was happening at the time, and he said, "The thought that I wanted to finish off that guy or that I was okay with him finishing himself in my house is not true."
So he denies guilt but acknowledges it happened there, which is disturbing in itself.
Exactly. His words deny responsibility, but they don't clear up the mystery. And the fact that there isn't this universally accepted answer just keeps fueling the questions about Dżembara's final moments.
And regardless of how he passed away, his death was dramatically linked to the bank's final chapter, wasn't it?
Absolutely. Just 12 days later, December 15th, 2017, federal regulators officially shut down Washington Federal Bank for Savings permanently.
12 days. The timing is just critical. It creates this powerful, unavoidable link, cause and effect. The CEO found deceased under mysterious circumstances. Less than 2 weeks later, the century-old bank is gone, closed forever.
The two events became tragically fused together, cementing this narrative of a collapse that was both financial and just deeply, personally devastating. It left the whole Bridgeport community reeling, not just losing their bank, but living under this unsettling shadow cast by their leader's final, mysterious moments.
So, after the bank's collapse, after Dżembara's death, the investigation that followed must have been massive.
Oh, absolutely huge. A sweeping effort to unravel more than a decade of complex fraud. It cast a really wide net, and ultimately it led to criminal charges against a remarkable number of people, 16 individuals connected to the bank's downfall.
16.
Wow. And this wasn't just, going after the obvious targets. It reached deep inside the bank. The chief financial officer, the treasurer, other high-ranking employees, plus, of course, people outside the bank who benefited from the scheme. 4 defendants actually went through lengthy jury trials and were convicted. 10 others pleaded guilty, basically admitting their role. And 2 entered into deferred prosecution agreements, which usually means they cooperated significantly with the investigation.
So the authorities were really determined to hold people accountable.
It seems so. They were clearly leaving no stone unturned trying to figure out this whole multi-million-dollar mess.
And the toughest sentence, that went to Robert Kowalski, right? Dżembara's longtime friend, the lawyer and contractor.
That's right. He got hit with a staggering sentence, 25 years in federal prison for embezzlement, bankruptcy fraud, tax fraud. The works. On top of the prison time, Kowalski was ordered to pay a huge amount in restitution, $7.2 million to the FDIC. That's the agency that had to step in and cover the bank's losses, protect depositors, and over $400,000 to the IRS.
A massive penalty. But what's so striking about him is the denial, isn't it? He just wouldn't accept responsibility.
Not at all. It's truly perplexing. He adamantly claimed that Dżembara, not him, was running a Ponzi scheme. Like Dżembara was just shuffling bank money around, robbing Peter to pay Paul. And even more bizarrely, he claimed that bank employees were signing his name on documents without his knowledge, basically saying they framed him.
Wait. He claimed other people, bank employees, were forging his signature on paperwork involving millions of dollars. That's an extraordinary claim, especially for a lawyer. You should know better.
Exactly. And the judge, U.S. District Chief Judge Virginia Kendall, she saw right through it. She didn't mince words. She rebuked him sharply in court, said he was, and I quote, absolutely incapable of looking at the reality of this situation. And she flat out called him delusional about being a victim.
Wow. The judge called him delusional.
Yes. It wasn't just a quick remark either. Judge Kendall spent real time addressing his refusal to face facts. And get this, she also pointed out his incredibly prolific filing of motions during his legal fight. He filed nearly daily motions, she said, 159 of them in total.
159 motions, that's obsessive.
Right. It got so bad that she eventually took the very rare step of banning him from filing any more motions because they were just repetitive and basically harassing the court. It really seemed like he genuinely believed he was innocent, or at least projected that belief, despite just overwhelming evidence and the judge basically telling him he was living in a fantasy world. That level of denial, or maybe it was calculated deflection, it's a really compelling part of his story.
Okay, and what about Marek Matczuk, the right-hand man, the guy in whose house Dżembara passed away? What happened to him?
Matczuk also received a significant sentence, nearly 13 years specifically, 12 years and 11 months in federal prison. He was also ordered to pay back a huge sum, over $5.9 million in restitution to the FDIC for his major role in the embezzlement.
So both he and Kowalski were on the hook for millions.
Absolutely. It shows just how deeply involved they both were in Jambar's scheme, receiving enormous amounts of illicit cash. And there's another layer to Matczuk's story. It's reported he had a stroke shortly after federal investigators questioned him back in early 2019. So his health failed significantly in the wake of all this. Adds another element of personal tragedy, really.
Yeah, definitely. And the convictions didn't stop with those two, did they? It really spread out.
No, the ripple effect was wide. It really shows how many people from different walks of life got pulled into Jambar's orbit of deception, often with huge personal and professional costs. Like Robert Kowalski's own sister, Jan R. Kowalski, she's also an attorney, she got a sentence of 2.5 to 3 years in prison. Why? For helping her brother hide over $350,000 in assets during his bankruptcy case, a direct attempt to conceal the stolen money.
Trying to keep the fraudulent gains hidden.
Exactly. Then there was William M. Mahan. He was a former high-ranking official at City Hall, and he was also on the bank's board. He got 18 months in prison for falsifying bank records and obstructing regulations.
So people on the board, people in positions of trust, were actively helping cover it up.
It points to a systematic effort, yeah. Not just Jambar acting alone, but others actively trying to hide the fraud, block investigations.
And we also saw Patrick Daley Thompson convicted,
Yeah.
the former alderman, grandson, and nephew of Chicago mayors. Deep political roots.
Mm-hmm. He received a 4-month prison sentence. His conviction was for lying to federal regulators about money he owed Washington Federal, and also for cheating on his income taxes related to that.
That really underscores how intertwined the bank was with politically connected people. And even those powerful names didn't make them immune when things unraveled.
Absolutely. And even John Gumber's own sister, Janice M. Weston, she faced consequences too. She got a 3-month sentence for altering bank records to try and deceive regulators.
Wow, his own sister.
Yeah. It paints a clear picture. This wasn't a one-man show. It was this deeply interconnected web. High-ranking bank officials, family members, political figures, all playing some part, whether actively participating or trying to cover things up later. And what's more, there are still 5 former bank employees who cooperated with the investigation who are still waiting to be sentenced.
Still waiting, years later.
Years later, which means the full story, the full legal accounting for everyone involved, it's actually still unfolding.
So despite all those convictions, all those prison sentences, the financial damage from Washington Federal's collapse is just immense, right? A huge burden left behind.
Colossal is the word. The Office of the Comptroller of the Currency, they looked at the books and determined the bank was fundamentally insolvent. Hopelessly broke. A major reason, at least $66 million in non-performing loans.
Okay, explain non-performing loans for us.
Sure. Basically, those are loans where the borrower has just stopped making payments for a long time, usually 90 days or more. They're essentially frozen assets on the bank's books, dead weight that drains the bank's health.
So $66 million in loans that weren't being paid back.
At least. And those bad loans were a big part of what contributed to the staggering total loss figure, $140 million.
$140 million. That's not just a number on a page. That's a massive hole blown in the community and the financial system.
Exactly. And that leads us to a really critical and frankly pretty disheartening point. The FDIC, the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, they're the ones who stepped in. They insured the deposits, protected the average person so they didn't lose their life savings when the bank failed. They did their job. But covering those losses cost the FDIC $140 million. And so far, they've only managed to recover about $50 million of that.
Only $50 million recovered out of $140 million.
That's the figure reported, which leaves this huge lingering question echoing around Bridgeport. Where did the other $90 million go?
$90 million vanished. Is it just untraceable? Will the community, the people who trusted that bank, ever see any of that recovered?
It's a tough question. The impact on the people in Bridgeport, people who relied on Washington Federal, it's profound. We're talking people's savings, loans for small businesses, maybe funds for community projects, all tied up in this. Many might never fully recover economically. This isn't just some abstract story about a crooked bank. It's a really stark reminder of the devastating real-world consequences when financial fraud goes unchecked. And it really hammers home that feeling of, wow, this could happen to anyone who puts their trust in their local bank. It just erodes that fundamental layer of trust we need in our financial institutions.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we're still left circling back to the central, lingering mystery, the thing that just hangs over this whole case, John Gambara's death. Despite the official ruling, the suicide finding by the authorities, the doubts from his family, from people close to the case, they've never gone away. They just can't square the official story with the man they knew or the circumstances of his passing.
Mm-hmm. Was it truly suicide? Was the immense pressure of the federal investigation closing in finally pushing him over the edge? That's one possibility. Or, as some people still quietly wonder, did something else happen? Something more sinister in those final moments?
The official ruling just hasn't brought closure or universal acceptance, has it? The questions just keep hanging there years later.
No, it really hasn't. And if you pull back, look at the bigger picture. The whole Washington federal story is just this powerful, really somber illustration of how white-collar crime can absolutely devastate entire communities, entire families. It leaves way more than just financial ruin behind. It doesn't just empty bank accounts. It destroys trust in institutions we rely on. It shatters the stability of neighborhoods, and it can leave these deep psychological scars that last for generations. The story of Washington Federal, it's not just about the money, even though the sums are staggering. It's really about these complex dynamics of trust and power and the incredible lengths people will go to hide what they've done, maybe believing they're untouchable. And unraveling schemes this complex, it takes incredible dedication from investigators. Years of work, often. And even then, as we see with the questions around Gambara's death, some pieces of these intricate puzzles might just never fit together perfectly for everyone.
So we've really come full circle in this deep dive, haven't we? From this beloved, respected community bank, a real institution in Bridgeport, to the shocking passing of its leader, John Gambara, found in the home of his right-hand man, Marek Matczuk. And it's all connected by this huge web of fraud that tangled up everyone from Gambara's own family members to powerful political figures like Patrick Daley Thompson. It's just a story that mixes finance, crime, and this really profound human drama in a way that's hard to categorize.
It really does. And this case truly highlights how complex financial crimes often are. They frequently hide right out in the open, carried out by people who seem completely respectable, people deeply embedded in the very systems we depend on. Unraveling it all, like we talked about, it takes immense dedication. Years of painstaking work by investigators, piecing together this huge mosaic of deception. It's also, I guess, a testament to the fact that eventually the truth can come out, no matter how well hidden it seems. And some measure of accountability can be achieved.
But it leaves you with that fundamental question, doesn't it? When the very institutions that are supposed to protect our money become tools for greed and deception, how do we rebuild that trust as a society, as individuals? And what other hidden connections, what deeper issues might still be lingering under the surface of stories like this, even after the trials are over, even after the headlines fade? Things that continue to affect communities and maybe our collective sense of security.
Those are the big, uncomfortable questions these kinds of cases force us to confront.
Deep dive into Washington Federal Bank for Savings. It certainly gives us a lot to think about, not just about money and banks, but about the lasting impact of betrayal on a community. And yeah, those questions that just don't seem to have easy answers.